One of the most frightening days of my life was the day I quit my job and officially became an entrepreneur. On that day, I knew there were no more steady paychecks, no more health insurance or retirement plan, no more days off or being sick or paid vacations. The terror of not having a steady paycheck was one of the most frightening experiences I had ever experienced. The day I officially left the company, I was in San Juan, Puerto Rico, because I was attending the Xerox Corporation's President's Club celebration, an event recognizing the top achievers in the company. Even though it was a celebration, I was having a miserable time. All I could think about was leaving the job, the steady paycheck, and the security of the company. Once the party in San Juan was over, I was going to go on my own. When leaving San Juan, the plane I was on experienced some kind of emergency. In preparing to land at Miami, the pilot had us all brace, cradle our heads, and prepare for a possible crash. Obviously, the plane did not crash, and I flew on to Chicago, where I was going to do a sales presentation for my line of nylon surfer wallets. I arrived at the Chicago Mercantile Mart late because of the flight delays, and the client I was supposed to meet, a buyer from a large chain of department stores, was already gone. Are people born entrepreneurs, or are they trained to be entrepreneurs? When I asked my rich dad his opinion on this question, he said, people can be trained to be either employees or entrepreneurs. The reason there are more employees than entrepreneurs is simply that our schools train young people to become employees. That is why so many parents say to their child, go to school so you can get a good job. I've yet to hear any parents say, go to school to become an entrepreneur. You may have noticed that many of our most famous entrepreneurs did not finish school. Some of those entrepreneurs are Thomas Edison, founder of General Electric; Henry Ford, founder of Ford Motor Company; Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft; Richard Branson, founder of Virgin; Michael Dell, founder of Dell Computers; Stephen Jobs, founder of Apple Computers and Pixar; and Ted Turner, founder of CNN. Obviously, there are other entrepreneurs who did well in school, but few as famous as these. I was not born a natural entrepreneur. I had to be trained. My rich dad guided me through a process of starting as an employee to eventually becoming an entrepreneur. For me, it was not an easy process. There was a lot I had to unlearn before I could begin to understand the lessons he was trying to teach me. It was difficult hearing what my rich dad had to say because what he said was exactly opposite from the lessons my poor dad was trying to teach me. Every time my rich dad talked about entrepreneurship, he was talking about freedom. Every time my poor dad talked to me about going to school to get a job, he was talking about security. I asked Rich Dad, aren't security and freedom the same thing? Smiling, he replied, security and freedom are not the same. In fact, they are opposites. The more security you seek, the less freedom you have. The people with the most security are in jail. That is why it is called maximum security. If you want freedom, you need to let go of security. Employees desire security, and entrepreneurs seek freedom. So the question is, can anyone become an entrepreneur? My answer is yes. It begins with a change in philosophy. It begins with a desire for more freedom than security. Many people do not become entrepreneurs because they are afraid of failing. Humans learn by making mistakes. We learn to walk by first falling down and then trying again. If we had never risked falling, we would go through life crawling like caterpillars. One of the better definitions of an entrepreneur is from Howard H. Stevenson, a professor at Harvard University. He says, entrepreneurship is an approach to management that we define as follows: the pursuit of opportunity without regard to resources currently controlled. In my opinion, this is one of the most brilliant definitions of what an entrepreneur is. It is bare bones and brilliant. Mr. Stevenson had many other bare-bone gems, especially when he compares entrepreneurs to employees or promoters to trustees, as he labels them. A few of these gems of comparison are: 1. When it comes to their strategic orientation, a promoter is driven by perception of opportunity. A trustee is driven by control of resources. In other words, entrepreneurs are always looking for the opportunity without much regard to whether they have resources. Employees focus on what resources they have or do not have, which is why so many people say, how can I start my business? I don't have the money. An entrepreneur would say, tie up the deal and then we'll find the money. This is also why my poor dad often said, I can't afford it. Being an employee, he looked at his resources. Those of you who have read my other books know that my rich dad forbade his son and me to ever say, "I can't afford it." Instead, he taught us to look at opportunities and ask, "How can I afford it?" He was an entrepreneur. 2. When it comes to management structure, a promoter is flat with multiple informal networks. A trustee is formalized hierarchy with multiple tiers. An entrepreneur will keep the organization small and lean, using cooperative relationships with strategic partners to grow the business. An entrepreneur will grow the organization horizontally, which means outsourcing rather than bringing the work in-house. An employee wants to grow the organization vertically, which means hiring more employees. 3. When it comes to reward philosophy, a promoter is value-driven, performance-based, team-oriented. A trustee is security-driven, resource-based, job promotion-oriented. Employees want job security with a strong company, a steady paycheck, and the opportunity for promotion. The entrepreneur doesn't want to climb the corporate ladder. He or she wants to own the corporate ladder. An entrepreneur is not driven by a paycheck, but by results of the team. Also, as Howard Stevenson states, many entrepreneurs start a business because they have very strong values that are more important than simply job security and a steady paycheck. They are passionate about their work, their mission, and love what they do. Howard Stevenson acknowledges that many people say that entrepreneurs are not good managers. Instead of agreeing with this commonly accepted point of view, he writes, "The entrepreneur is stereotyped as egocentric and idiosyncratic, and thus unable to manage. However, although the managerial task is substantially different for the entrepreneur, the management skill is nonetheless essential." Right on, Howard. In other words, entrepreneurs manage people differently. Since entrepreneurs are not necessarily managing employees, they need to manage people differently. Very simply put, entrepreneurs need to know how to manage other entrepreneurs. So, entrepreneurs are not poor managers, as many people think. They simply have a very different management style, because they are managing people they cannot tell what to do or fire. Have you ever noticed that software, such as Microsoft's Windows, comes in versions such as Windows 2.0 and Windows 3.0? What that means is that they have improved their product and now want you to buy the better version. In other words, the first product they sold you was not perfect. Many people fail to get to market because they are constantly perfecting their product. My rich dad often said, "Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly." Henry Ford said, "Thank God for my customers. They buy my products before they are perfected." Entrepreneurs start and continue to improve themselves, their businesses, and their products. Many people will not start unless everything is perfect. That is why many of them never start. Knowing when to introduce a product into the marketplace is as much an art as a science. You may not want to wait for a product to be perfect. It may never be perfect. It just has to work well enough to be accepted in the marketplace. However, if the product is so flawed that it doesn't work for its intended purpose, or otherwise does not meet marketplace expectations, or causes problems, it can be very difficult to re-establish credibility and a reputation for quality. In martial arts, there is a saying that goes, "A cup that is full is useless. Only when a cup is empty is it useful." This is true for the entrepreneur. We have all heard people say, "Oh, I know all about that." Those are words coming from a person whose cup is full, a person who believes he or she knows all the answers. An entrepreneur cannot afford to know all the answers. Entrepreneurs know they can never know all the answers. They know their success requires that their cup is always empty. To be successful as employees, people need to know the right answers. If they do not know the right answers, they may be fired or not promoted. Entrepreneurs do not need to know all the answers. All they need to know is who to call. That is what advisors are all about. People go to school to become specialists. People go to school to become an accountant, attorney, secretary, nurse, doctor, engineer, or computer programmer. These are people who know a lot about a little. What makes an entrepreneur different is entrepreneurs must know a little about accounting, the law, engineering systems, business systems, insurance, product design, finance, investing, people, sales, marketing, public speaking, raising capital, and dealing with different people trained in different specialties. True entrepreneurs know there is so much to know and so much they do not know. They cannot afford the luxury of specialization. That is why their cup must always be empty. They must always be learning. This means the entrepreneur must be a very proactive learner. A true entrepreneur has no graduation day.